Hey, welcome back to leadership class. Today we're talking about conflict resolution. When all leadership is relational. There's no such thing as a non-relational leadership. When you're working with people, that's the only way you can lead is if you have people. And whenever you're working with them, that involves relationship. And sometimes that relationship is difficult. Sometimes there's some challenges along the way. I'm going to share my screen with you here. Some people are kind of like this drunk octopus. They just want to fight. They just want to, they just want to fight. And so I want to talk about like how do we lead through conflict or times when anxiety amps organizationally. A lot of times people let their emotions get the best of them, and a leader has to come in and be a calming influence with that to set things in the even keel, right? The Bible says, let love be without dissimulation or fakiness. Abhor that which is evil and cling to that which is good. A lot of times people will have a they'll have a shell like at the core it's leadership, it's the agenda, and then they put a little glaze of love out on the outside of it. They kind of wrap it up with that so it makes it accessible to people, that makes it tolerable for people. But that's not what it is. I mean, that's love with dissimulation. I mean, like, I think love without dissimulation means if you peel away deep at the core, it really is love. I would say that love needs to be the core, and maybe leadership should be the little glaze that we put on the top of that. If you have to give up one or the other, give up leadership over giving up love. But leadership involves relationships, and that's a big piece of that. Toni Morrison said, "Love is, love ain't, then love ain't no love at all." Yeah, we got to love our people. We got to love them all, and that's what holiness is all about: loving God with all of your heart, loving your neighbor as yourself. I like to say, holiness is living in the overflow of holy love, and this is tested as you are a leader because you have to make hard decisions and people react, and then you have to kind of treat people well when they react. Like to live above with the saints we love, oh, what blissful glory. But to live below with the saints we know, that's another story, isn't it? Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road. I like this from this church. Our church is like fudge, sweet with a few nuts, and usually the nuts come in together at the same time, and sometimes things do get nutty, don't they? One goal that I've had, is to try to eliminate craziness. But sometimes when we eliminate craziness, we have to do that without eliminating the crazies. There are just a few crazy. Maybe you're the crazy person, right? Yeah, we're just a bunch of nuts anyhow, right? One thing I know about your church or any organization is somebody's mad about something. Yeah, that's the way it works. Somebody's upset about something. If you want to make everybody happy, then for heaven's sakes, don't do ministry. Drive an ice cream truck. That'll do it. But if you're going to lead in any respect and you're going to make any change of any kind, which is necessary for growth to occur, you're going to make people mad because no matter what it is, somebody's going to be mad about it. I remember one time there's a story about a guy fell asleep in church, by the way, and and the preacher said, "Anybody wanting to go to heaven? I want you to stand up." And everybody stood up except for that guy. And he woke up and he looked around. He saw everybody else was standing. He said, "Well, I don't care what you guys are voting for, but I'm against it." So there's always going to be somebody that's against it. So, but what is it that upsets people? Some stuff that people are upset, they have a valid reason for being, and sometimes not. And so the question is, what is it that upsets people? For the most part, most upsettings happen because somebody feels disrespected or there's a misalignment between like two visions. In fact, die means two, and vision, it's vision. That's where you get division. You like when church splits and stuff happens because two people have two different visions for what ought to be done, a misalignment. Or maybe a misunderstanding where we thought that they're doing this, but that's not really what they mean, but we assume that. And so that gets us upset and mad. Disrespect, misalignment, and misunderstanding. Think about a time maybe when you felt disrespected or you felt like you were just janging with something. Or how did you feel upset? Think about the last time you felt upset. Did it tie into one of these things? Disrespect, misalignment, or misunderstanding? It's helpful to know that. Sometimes when we get all upset, we end up inside our cage and we have like a little child that's inside of us, a little kid. And particularly if been a wounding that happened when we're a little kid, anybody that touches on that nerve is just going to get a reaction from us. But the point of that actually is God is trying to bring that out so he can touch it and heal it. Not that somebody touches it, hits a raw nerve, and you overreact and scream and yell, but that he wants to touch to bring healing to your heart. In ministry, Chuck Swindoll says you have to have the skin of a rhinoceros and the heart of a lamb. Skin of a rhino, a heart of a lamb. Sometimes it's the opposite. Some people have the skin of a lamb and the heart of a rhinoceros. um, to be tender-hearted, the Bible says, but yet to be tough. We need to be tough because I mean, people are going to be critical. If you can't take criticism, don't do ministry. People will be criticizing you all the time. As a pastor, I had critics every single week. Somebody was up, like complained about something. So you just kind of learn, you grow. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes they were just blowing off steam. Sometimes it was their own emotional issues. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You just learn and you grow. Now, with the criticism, you don't have to swallow the whole walnut. You crack open the shell, you eat the nut, and then you throw the shell away. A lot of times there's about 80% falsehood and then a tiny little kernel of truth. Just eat the kernel of truth. Oh, that's good. I like good walnuts. Sometimes misunderstandings happen because we just don't see things the same way. Like with this picture, do you see a bug or do you see a cowboy? I see a cowboy. Other people see it, they see a bug. It all depends on how you look at it. On this one, do you see a young lady or do you see an old lady? Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? Some people see the old lady, some people see the young lady. It's an optical illusion. And sometimes things happen and we see it a certain way because that's the way we see it. And it may be different than what somebody else sees. They may not see it exactly the same way. And sometimes the way they see it can add light to the way you see it. Just because the way you see it doesn't mean that's the way it exactly is. Now, when there's a conflict or there's a change where somebody gets all upset, insecurity and anxiety are the great amplifiers of things. They blow it up, right? And so we end up assuming things more when we're insecure and anxious. Misunderstandings and misalignments increase when we are insecure and misunderstanding. We interpret things as disrespect when we're insecure and anxious. So if we can amp that down just a little bit, peace, peace to you, peace, be still. It helps with all of these things. Insecurity and anxiety just amplifies it all. There's a great book. I almost made it as a textbook for this class called A Tale of Three Kings. If you've never read it, I highly recommend it. It's a little book, but basically the idea we have Saul, David, and Absalom. And the question is, which of these are you? So, like Saul, he's the king, he's an insecure leader, and this David comes along, and David has a pure heart, but Saul wants to kill David because he's insecure. David has a son named Absalom who's rebellious and just pushing the limit and going outside the bound of authority. It raises a rebellion against his own dad. And so, like, the question is, let's say we're in a relationship, like we have somebody that's over us and we're under them. Are they Saul and we're David? Or are they David and we happen to be Absalom? Or if we're the one who's in charge, like are we David and the person underneath us is Absalom, just rebelling? Good grief, those incorrigible people. Or are we Saul and that other person is actually like David? So we need to take a hard look at ourselves because usually we always interpret ourselves as David. when in reality, we're probably more like Saul or more like Absalom. There's a guy named John Gottman that wrote a book on marriage, relationships, and he talks about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. But this is true in all relationships, including like ministry team relationships, staff relationships, and things, your church board relationships. These four horsemen show that something is really wrong and you need to somehow get to the bottom line or it's just not going to work. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. All right. So criticism, if you're just pointing out the flaws, eventually it leads to contempt, where you just really disrespect this person completely. The person on the receiving end of the criticism gets defensive because it hurts when you get criticized, and so they get defensive. And then after a while, so this hurts too much, and they start stonewalling. So they'll just create a barrier, create a distance. They won't talk to each other anymore. They're the minimal contact, right? And so, like, if these things are happening, they're warning signs that the relationship is damaged and you need to figure out a way. Now, God can heal broken relationships. Gottman actually says the way you do that is through repair attempts. And a repair attempt is where you say, hey, are we okay? Let's say you have a hard conversation. Say, hey, I just want you to know I still love you. And if now do they accept that repair? You know, if they do, okay, I know, I love you too. All right, now we're good, right? But if I say that, I know it's still well, I don't know. I'm just still need some time. You know, like if the repair attempt is rejected, that's when the relationship is in rocky ground. I would suggest as much as you possibly can, keep short accounts with people and keep making repair attempts. And if others are making repair attempts towards you, you try to reciprocate that. Patrick Lencioni talks about the five dysfunctions of a team: absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, inattention to results. It's interesting that fear of conflict is a major dysfunction, is what he says. So this is where you keep the peace at all costs. And what that means is people aren't free to really speak what they think. And that is not peace. That's just a Cold War. And so, like, we need to actually have the conversations in order to move things forward. If you can't have a reasonable conversation with disagreement, and there might even be some conflict involved in it, you're not going to have a very good team. Now, if your team is defined by conflict, that's a different story. I mean, if it's all conflict, well, now you're back to this stonewalling and that kind of stuff, right? Um, so basically, there are four conflict response patterns. There's there's compromising, and this is where I give in, and I will let you win. And accommodating is where, okay, I don't really like this that much, but I'll accommodate this much, but not that much, right? It's sort of a compromise, you know, like, okay, I'll give this if you do that, right? Avoiding is just totally blanking it out and just trying to get away from it as much as you can. Uh, Competing is a pattern where, let's say your leadership is challenged, you're going to win, and so I'm going to argue until I get my point across. And then the collaborating thing is saying, okay, we see things differently. How can we come to a good resolution here? What works for you? What's a win-win? There are different online assessments and stuff that you can find out which one of these you tend to do. You probably already know what it is, though, isn't it? And usually it's not collaborating is our first response. It's either avoiding or competing or maybe giving it all in. Okay, whatever, you know. But I think there's another way. There's another way to do this, right? Um, so whether we are more assertive or more cooperative, if it's high levels of cooperative and high levels of assertiveness, that's where you can do collaboration. But if you're not being a cooperative, and you're not being assertive, that's where you withdraw, right? There's that. If you are very assertive but uncooperative, now you're competing. So think about what your personality style is like and what you tend to do. If your lizard brain is taking over and you're acting in an unhealthy pattern, what would it be? And then whatever it is, you want to work on that to recognize that and realize, okay, well, I'm an avoider. I can't avoid this one. Now there's a really great organization called Peacemakers, and this guy says that there's different responses to conflict. And the middle responses are peacemaking responses. And then if it's not peacemaking, you have attack responses or escape responses. So the competers would go over here, and the escapers would go over here. The avoiders would go over here. The main thing is to try to talk it out, work it through. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can do that, even through negotiation or even overlooking the offense, perhaps, or to hold somebody accountable to something here. You want to try to work it out. You're working it out. But if what happens is sometimes one person is trying to work it out, but the other person goes into the escape response, either denying or fighting, or they go to the attack response. They like just go into a verbal assault. Even physical assaults can happen here, right? Or taking a person to court, litigation. But the ultimate here is murder. The ultimate on this side is suicide. Now, one thing about it is you want to stay in the brown zone as much as you possibly can. And if you see the other person slipping into this, the only way, like say somebody is just on the verge of the red, the only way you get them out of that is through understanding them. Want to make sure that they know that they're heard. Now, once they're heard, they don't have to have their way. They have to have their way heard. And so then it kind of helps to like lower that temperature so you can get back into the middle zone here so you can deal with it. Now, a couple of faulty responses to a situation. Let's say that there was a sexual scandal that happens. Maybe a person does something with a teenager or something in your church, and it's really bad. And then you try to overlook it. You try to do this. Actually, it needs this kind of response. You need to like fire that person and get that person out of youth ministry and all of that. You can we love the person, but I'm talking about organizationally. You can't have that person there because that's just a danger to the entire organization when that happens. And if you overlook it or say, no, well, you just need to forgive this and let's move on or whatever, like if you do that, that actually creates more of this. So you get litigation and all that. If you underreact, they overreact, right? And if you overreact, like you don't want to kill a fly with a hand grenade, a fly swatter works just fine. And sometimes people overreact and they make a decision, they drop a bomb on something, and really what it probably needed was just a little fine-tuned kind of stuff. So you got to find which reaction is appropriate to the offense or to the situation and then act accordingly. That takes discernment. So the question is this just a problem to solve? Is it a disagreement? Is it a contest? Now we're thinking win-lose here. Is it fight or flight? Like this is where a church fight happens and a split happens. Or is it irretractable? And this is where it's search and destroy. These people might have left the church, but they're still like doing web pages and they're sending nasty stuff to a whole bunch of people trying to lobby for other people. So again, if it's really a fight or flight situation, or it's become a contest because but you're just dealing with it as a problem to solve, you're under dealing with it. You have to actually go. Doesn't mean you have to enter the contest, but you have to recognize the fact that there is one, right? And there is a fight going on, and we got to figure out how can we come to how can we move it back. So the way what happens is this moves step by step backwards, right? You can't go from here up to here except for an amazing, unusual Holy Spirit intervention. You can't do that. You stair step it backwards. It de-escalates slowly. You cannot resolve conflict. Conflict is the emotional state, right? It's an emotional thing. And you cannot resolve the emotional state of conflict somebody is in until their anxiety is reduced. And the way you reduce anxiety is by understanding them. So, how do you have a hard conversation? You just show up, even though you want to avoid it, you do it anyway. You think through ahead of time, what are the key things, the key terms, the things you want to get to? Try not to being attacking with this, but say, what is the real bottom line? You want to define that and make sure that you guys are talking about the same thing. That would take deals with the misunderstanding. You replace a judgment with wonder. I think you're stupid, right? That's judgment. Hey, I wonder why you did. I'm puzzled. A way to handle that is say, I'm puzzled why this is that. Why did you do that? It puzzled is a little bit different than you're stupid. Allow some space for silence. If you ask a question, don't just automatically, is it because of this, because of this, because of this? Just leave it and let them speak. And remember, try to do a truth grace blend. It's both grace and truth. Don't just give them truth without grace, but speak the truth. You got to do both, grace and truth. I'm going to put a this ladder on the front page of Canvas. It's Pete Scazzero's ladder of integrity, and you start from the bottom and you work it right up, right? And this is a conversation that you have. Right now, this is the issue on my mind. I'm anxious because of this. Now, this is my part in this thing. I didn't tell you, whatever. Here's what I need. What my reaction tells me is this, and this is important to me. I'm willing to do this. I'm unwilling to do this. One thing I can do to improve it is this. The most important thing I want you to know is this. I think honestly sharing is going to help our relationship, and I look forward to this. This turns a negative conversation into a positive conversation, but it starts with the problem you're trying to deal with. So I'll put a link on the front page of Canvas for you for that, and you'll be able to actually use this and walk the ladder of integrity. Now, let's say you hurt somebody. When you do an apology, be specific. Don't just say sorry. And you own your own stuff, like saying, I'm sorry that I hurt you. Now, maybe what you said was true. Maybe what you said was right, but what you said was hurtful. So you don't have to say, I'm sorry I said it. You can say, I'm sorry I hurt you. And whatever it is that you can own, honestly, own that as much as you possibly can. I'm sorry I'm sorry how that came out. I didn't mean to hurt your heart, right? And then they'll say, but. If you put a but on the end of it, it negates the apology. So no, yeah, but I'm so sorry I hurt you. But if you wouldn't have done that just totally negates the whole thing. So get rid of the but. When you forgive somebody, it's not excusing them and it's not forgetting them. A lot of times people think forgiveness means forgetting or excusing. Maybe what they did is inexcusable, and maybe you can't forget what they did. It isn't letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself off the hook. Basically, you're saying, you know what? I'm not going to let you live in my head rent free anymore. I don't want you to hold my heart captive anymore, hostage to bitterness. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let it go. What you did was wrong, but I'm not going to bring it back to hurt you anymore. I'm not going to just keep ruminating on this. And basically, what I'm doing then is I'm just letting it go. A grudge starts with a grr and ends with udge. It's a bad word, right? Grr, udge. Like, let it go, let it go, let it go, right? And if you can't, let's say that sometimes forgiveness, there's a feeling that goes with that, but sometimes you make an act of forgiveness, but the feeling of hurt comes back when you see the person again. Corrie ten Boom, who survived a concentration camp, said that whenever that comes, that's just a little bell just to remind you to forgive all over again. And as you begin to do this over and over and over again, as an act of the will, saying, God, I can't do the forgiving, but you've said I need to forgive, so you're going to have to do the forgiving through me as much as I can. That's what I want to do. He will answer that, and eventually you'll be able to deal with that situation with less pain. You can't play harmony alone. You can't sing harmony alone. Harmony, it takes more than one. Psalm 133, behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. It says it's like oil running down on Aaron's beard. And the idea there was, Moses and Aaron had had a falling out, brothers, but they had fallen out. Aaron had built the golden calf. Moses was angry with him with that. He just was so mad. And then God said, I want you to anoint Aaron and make him the priest. He learned his lesson. So forgive him and let's move on. So they build a bridge and they get over it. And Moses anoints Aaron with oil. And I imagine the oil and their tears intermingle as the oil and the tears flow together. Behold, how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together. They like oil running down on Aaron's beard. Well, there you go. That's my lesson for today. Hope it was helpful for you.